Well, for more, let's cross now to correspondent Gulliver Cragg. Gulliver, as we saw in that report, Wednesday the focus was on these accusations by Moscow of an assassination attempt against its president. And Thursday, Volodymyr Zelenskiy pops up in The Hague.
The timing was quite convenient for the Ukrainian president, one might say, because presumably this trip to The Hague was already planned, but it was a surprise for international audiences. And it came just after he had responded to these accusations by Moscow of Ukraine attempting to assassinate Putin by attacking the Kremlin with drones. And Volodymyr Zelenskiy had said, "We are not in the business of trying to kill the Russian president. We want the tribunal to judge him." And that is, of course, a tribunal in The Hague. As we saw in the report, Ukraine would like the International Criminal Court to prosecute Vladimir Putin and other Russian leaders. There's already been an arrest warrant issued for the crime of deporting Ukrainian children to Russia. There are other war crimes that Russia is accused of in Ukraine, numerous other war crimes, bombing cities, killing civilians, deporting adult Ukrainians as well as children. But there is also the crime of aggression that Ukraine would like to see the Russian leadership tried for. And for that, they want to see the creation of a special new tribunal for that. One complicating factor in this is that, as we saw in the report, Russia is not a signatory, not a member of the International Criminal Court, does not respect its jurisdiction, but actually nor does Ukraine, which is a bit of a thorny issue. Ukraine has not ratified the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. It has on occasion in history accepted its jurisdiction, but it still refuses to ratify the Rome Statute, although there are a lot of people in Ukraine saying that it should. At the moment, Kiev says that it can't because of the amount of allegations that would probably be made against Ukrainian soldiers going back to 2014. They believe that allies of Russia would sort of drown the court in allegations that Ukraine would have to prove the innocence of its soldiers in, and that's the excuse that they give anyway. But certainly in Ukraine, people are all the time talking about the need to bring the Russian leadership to justice, and they have been since the very beginning of the full-scale invasion. I remember early on in 2022 seeing on roads heading westwards in Ukraine signs with all the signs pointing ahead, ergo westwards, had been repainted so that instead of saying Kiev or Lviv or wherever, they just said The Hague, and then there were signs pointing to do a U-turn basically and go back to Russia, encouraging the Russian soldiers to do that.
And Gulliver, any trip abroad these days by Ukraine's president is accompanied by a plea for weapons, firepower, and air power.
Yes, they really, really want to get sophisticated Western fighter jets, in particular F-16s, and they're calling for those again. I think, though, that the Ukrainian leadership realizes that they are not going to get those in time for the much-touted spring counteroffensive. A few days ago, Volodymyr Zelenskiy told Scandinavian media that the counteroffensive would definitely go ahead even without those fighter jets, although they would be helpful. Those were his words. The Foreign Minister, Dmytro Kuleba, has said that he actually expects a US decision on F-16s to perhaps hang on the results of the counteroffensive, or perhaps the first results. I'm not entirely sure whether he meant that they would give them if the Ukrainians showed that they couldn't manage without them, or that they would give them if the Ukrainians showed that they were really doing a very good job and had a good chance of winning if they just had those extra weapons in the form of the fighter jets.
Gulliver Cragg, many thanks. We'll be crossing back live to you during the France 24 debate. That's in a little